Hey everyone, Brian Chrisman here again. Thanks for coming back. And I had planned on jumping right into some reading. I said I wouldn't do many readings, but I'm going to do a reading of the first part of my book, which is a mock trial of the Gospel in the Dock. I think it's kind of entertaining and interesting and just a good way to kind of get things going here. But in the meantime, I thought to myself that maybe I should read the very beginning of the acknowledgments. Because it's really pretty important. And so I'm going to read these acknowledgments, just the very first paragraph. I say, and I had mentioned in the first video my debt to C.S. Lewis for the title, coming from his Gospel in the Dock, or God in the Dock, to inspiring my title, The Gospel in the Dock. So I say in the acknowledgments, first paragraph, my greatest debt of gratitude is to C.S. Lewis. It came to pass that over 4 decades ago, as I made my way through the disenchanted wilderness of the world, I happened upon a magical wardrobe. It pulled this rejecter of Christianity into the world of Narnia and Aslan. That great lion was on the move and followed me as I left the wardrobe, soon pouncing upon me as the living Christ. Humanly speaking, apart from Lewis's re-enchanting spell of Narnia and the subsequent mentorship received through many of his other books, this book would never have been written. Some of those things I have italicized, but they're from the Narnia and Aslan, the Chronicles of Narnia. The Aslan was on the move was a thing. But what happened to me over 4 decades ago, as I say, and I kind of borrowed a little bit, I think, from Pilgrim's Progress about walking through the wilderness of the world. But over 4 decades ago, I think it's been 45 years at least, some friends from college, Debbie and I went up to Maine and visited some friends from college I had made. And they introduced us to this book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They said, you should read this book. They had become Christians since college. Well, I think the wife had been a Christian, brought up in a missionary family. At any rate, at this point in my life, I was searching, but Christianity was on the bottom of my list. I was against missionaries. I was against evangelism. I didn't believe in the gospel. I didn't believe in Jesus per se. I didn't know if God was everything, like a pantheistic view or a personal God. I had been reading all kinds of things, different things. Like I said, Christianity was the bottom of my list. Well, I stumbled on this book, perchance, and read it, and it deeply impacted me. I saw Christianity, which I had been brought up with, in a completely new light by seeing it kind of recast in the world of Narnia. And C.S. Lewis, what actually happened to me is exactly what C.S. Lewis was trying to do. In his wonderful book, The Weight of Glory, which has a sermon called The Weight of Glory. It's probably his best sermon, at least in my opinion, but it is a really, really powerful, unbelievable sermon that he preached. It's written in this book, The Weight of Glory. He says, this is page 7 in this version here, says, do you think I am trying to cast a spell? I was going by memory there. I couldn't find my place. My eyes were whacking out here. Lighting's kind of strange in here, and I was just outside. I got my glasses on, reflections and things. At any rate, do you think I am trying to weave a spell? Perhaps I am, but remember your fairy tales. Spells are used for breaking enchantments as well as for inducing them. And you and I have need of the strongest spell that can be found to wake us up from the evil enchantment of worldliness which has been laid upon us for nearly 100 years. He's talking about the enchantment of modernism, Enlightenment thinking. And it's very interesting that C.S. Lewis, who was an incredibly logical thinker, a scholar, a professor, he chose to share the gospel through a children's story. And that informs a lot of my apologetic to follow a narrative form, to get into imagination, to just get beyond just dogmatic theology, which has its place. But, the Bible's not a bunch of propositions of truth. It's full of narrative stories, things that, Jesus spoke in parables that we can kind of jump into ourselves. So the Chronicles of Narnia is Lewis's parable of the gospel that we can jump into through this wardrobe, kind of live through it, live through our overfamiliarity of Jesus dying and rising again. And when I read that book, and literally several days later, I had an experience where I felt like I encountered the living Christ, and I have never been the same since then. And that's just a bit of my testimony. I've read tons of C.S. Lewis. He's my main mentor. After him came people like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, especially, and of the last 5 years, especially Soren Kierkegaard. Soren Kierkegaard very much wrote all kinds of different ways to share the gospel, much like C.S. Lewis did. I actually wrote a paper published in a theological journal about the similarities between the missionary methods of C.S. Lewis and Soren Kierkegaard. I should probably post a link for that. At any rate, if it was not for C.S. Lewis and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I would not have been a Christian. I would have never written my book, The Gospel in the Dock, which is a defense, albeit a slightly different one, but it's a defense of the gospel of Jesus Christ and showing why I think it is good for the church, humanity, and the world. So that's a little bit of background, where I'm coming from. Believe me, if I had not encountered that book, actually at the top of my list at the time I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was probably becoming some kind of a shaman. I was into kind of Native American, more so possibly South American shamanism and New Age kind of stuff. I was interested at pantheism. I looked into Hinduism. I was searching, and like I said, going into the wardrobe through Narnia, coming out, Jesus pounced upon me, and he grabbed me and changed me and has never let me go. At any rate, that may sound kind of mushy to some of you, but there's a lot to come in this book. I do not eschew rational thinking and rationality and some modernistic ways of thinking, logic, whatever, but the gospel was not written primarily with those things in mind. It was written to affect us as human beings living in the world where we live as humans and we think as humans. We're not brains on a stick. That's something I get into in the book. We're embodied creatures living in a creation that God has made, and God uses that creation, including aesthetics, literature, plays, novels, things like that to reach us. Music is a big thing, songs. God has a lot of ways to reach us. I touched upon this in a video I did in my other channel about Kierkegaard and my philosophy, but Blaise Pascal was also a huge influence on me. He said, the heart has its reasons, which reason does not know. And that's really the underlying thought of my apologetic. And it comes out in my book, The Gospel in the Dock. And so I hope you'll come on back. Just a little bit of bio. The next videos, I probably do a series of videos where I'll be reading this kind of mock trial, and hopefully read it well, and hopefully that will spur on some discussion and questions and comments, whatever. At any rate, thank you so much for taking out your time. This took me a little longer than I expected, but I want to be a little bit thorough. This is an important introduction to this whole thing. So at any rate, thanks once again.